pulls you straight down. Earth from a bird's eye view. You should grow feathers and see this too. When you want to get off the darkest ground, but gravity pulls you straight down. When you want to get off the darkest ground, gravity pulls you straight down. Clear sky. When you want to get off the darkest ground, but gravity pulls you straight down. Earth from a bird's eye view. You should grow feathers and see this too. When you want to get off the darkest ground, but gravity pulls you straight down. When you want to get off the darkest ground, gravity pulls you straight down. Clear sky.
Open eye, feel the waves cut through me, hypnotized by the sounds I'm breathing in. Hold tight, chemicals collide. Hold tight, hold tight, hold tight. Dripping lights paint the skies, all because of you. Dripping lights paint the skies, only you can make me so
Hello, 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 and welcome back to another stream of Boomeadow Builds. This is a very exciting stream of Boomeadow Builds today, actually, because we have, at long last, finally finished the world maps for State of Anarchy, and today we will be starting on a very exciting, a very new town map for the city of Corkwood. So I'm very excited to jump in and get this done, because this will be the first town that the players will experience when they finally get to a town. Hello, Tide Runner Gaming. It is wonderful to have you here. I have not done anything yet, so I cannot save, but thank you for making a point. So, to recap, on the screen in front of you, you have Feyawyr, which is the Feywild of my world. We have Anthalamir, which is the material plane of the world. And finally, at long last, for those who have not yet seen it or are not yet familiar with it, we have Nethreg, which is the hells of my world, which we actually finished up last stream. So yes, it is very exciting. I like it. I do. I hope you guys like it. There were lots of little elements that we've added into this. So yeah, lots of little elements we've added into this, including but not limited to cities that are created by you guys. Cities, towns, this kind of thing. So here we have it, a brand new town map. Now, I actually get a lot of the base outlines through a generator that I use, which is a medieval fantasy city generator, which I just basically input some of my information and data and things like this for what I want it to kind of achieve, and just generate until I find something that kind of looks like the area that I want it to look like. Oh, sorry about that. I just had to message one of the rights producers that I'm working with, which I'm going to take this opportunity to shamelessly plug his books. You should definitely check out the works of David Parker Ross. I do have some connection to it, as I am the audiobook narrator for at least one of his characters at this stage, in the character of Stacey Grant. She is an amazing Australian character in his Perceptions book series, which is about Jenna Plural, a genetically modified American Marine, I believe in the 2100s, in a time when there is the Pacific Alliance and the Europeans are at war. It is sci-fi space travel. It is fantastic, and you should definitely check it out if you have not yet. But yes, David is a wonderful author, and I do suggest you check out his work. So I'm going to take that opportunity to shamelessly plug him, but otherwise, let's jump in, shall we? I have had my game application up now for... I've had my game application now up for 2 weeks, and I will be sending out the messages tomorrow to the potential players. Oh, thank you for the posture check. And I haven't done anything. There's nothing to save. But thank you, Tide Runner. We're going to be very keen, are we, tonight? I know that you're really, really excited. You may notice that there are several new channel points, because so there is a possibility. He's giggling madly to himself. Hello, Spinner. Feels like long time no see. How are you? Okay, let's start here by at least just getting in landmass. I shall name them all apothecaries. Well, I'm thinking I'm going to do apothecaries a little bit differently this time around. Hello, David Fakaros. How are you? I have just finished shamelessly plugging your books, so because what can I say? I love the character of Stacey, so I honestly think everybody should give your books a go. They are a very nice, easy read too. They're not ridiculously long tomes that you would kill a cat if they dropped on them, which is great. And the best part about it is you write them from different, correct me if I'm wrong, you write them from different perspectives of different characters within the books. So you do actually get different perspectives. The Tipsy Alchemist. Thank you. I do try to bring her to life for you. But yes, now everyone knows who you are. Ha ha ha. But yes, of course you would, Tide Runner, name them all Tipsy Alchemist. And you know what? That's actually not a bad idea, because we all love a good tavern that has magical drinks and whatnot. Well, that was a bit weird. I just got a tap on my shoulder and I thought it was a person. But it wasn't. It was my kitten. Yes. Hopefully my cats don't start fighting next to me. We'll see what happens. They both love hanging out. Beans, yes. I need a beans emote. Hopefully they don't start fighting, because they do like hanging out. Obviously you guys can't see this, but I actually have my recording space next to me for when I do my work and stuff. And my cats love hanging out in there because all the audio foam in there makes it nice and warm and stuff. Which I have covered the interior with a blanket when I'm not using it, because I personally don't like breathing cat hair while I'm trying to record. Cats be like parkour. You can't say that word or you might summon Valkor. We know what Valkor is like with parkour. Now, let's have a look. Do we want a ripples effect? Parkour, parkour. Oh gosh. You are going to end up summoning him. Maybe. We'll see. Summon the cat. Yes, well, I mean, that is very much Sabata's character. For those who don't know, Sabata is the character played by Valkor. Do I want the... sorry, I know, squirrel brain. Do I want the... I think I only want that to be 0.5. Do we want more? That's cool. Do we want the gap between them a little bit wider? That's okay. Bring forth the cheesecake. Goodness grief. Hearing me madly type as well, so... Oh God. I don't know what Stacey's catchphrase would be. She's very unapologetically Australian, and I love that about her. She is, for people who don't know, a girl from Wagga Wagga, which, as she states in the book, is a real place in Australia. So, but she has one of the best friendships ever with her gunner, because she's Stacey is an Air Force pilot. She has the best relationship with her gunner, Harper. Best friends forever. So you have to keep your eye out, because there is actually another Stacey novel coming shortly, I believe. I don't want to say too much, because I've got to keep some of David's secrets. Actually, before I do that, now that I have this line work in, I'm going to put in the cliff edges, because I normally do a cliff edge kind of finish on these. Yes, all I will say is, obviously Stacey is a badass, and yeah, fantastic character. An emote. I don't know what a Stacey emote would look like, David. Honestly, it'd probably, knowing my luck, it'd probably be a beer bottle or something. Because she likes a good beer. Not that she's an alcoholic, I will say that. She will defend as well that she's not an alcoholic. But it is obviously for people who are not aware of the Australian spirit, there is a bit of a drinking culture in Australia, so... So I do this to try and make it kind of natural. And then I actually still like, even though that this overlaps here, I'm likely to turn these into like little beaches and things like this. So for those who don't know about Corkwood, I can explain a little bit about Corkwood. Corkwood is in the Feywild in Feyawyr. It is in the court of the Spring Court, which I am aware, well, and I know now, that what I have decided to do with the Fey courts is, so summer and winter courts, the summer and winter courts are predominantly ruled over by the Fey queens. So we have obviously the Summer Queen and the Winter Queen, but we also have now. We also are going to have the Autumn and Spring courts to be ruled by the Fey Kings. So I've been creating the Fey Kings, and then overarching what I think I wanted to do was there is also the mothers, the Fey mothers. So they are inherently the dark and shadow mothers, who basically, because over the 4 eras of the game now, there have actually been 2 Summer Queens and 2 Winter Queens, because it has actually changed, because it was part of a player story that they were actually destined to become the next Fey Queen, Winter Queen of the Fey. And the at the time, the current reigning queen of the Fae, obviously was trying to blackmail or do away with her so that she couldn't basically usurp her position. So we have done that, and that's a story element that has happened. So I'm actually really excited about that we're going to be adding in the Fae Mothers. So in terms of what I've figured out the Fae hierarchy to be then is obviously we've got the Fae Mothers, we've got the Fae Kings and Queens, and then under them is, where are my notes? Because I have notes for everything. It helps me keep my squirrel brain sorted out. Under them are the Fae Lords and Ladies, who rule over essentially the states or territories. And then under them, the people that run the towns for them are essentially the Fae Knights and Knaves. So usually, because in keeping with everything in my world being in balance, if you are not aware, my world has a very heavy emphasis on balance. And so they basically run, the Fae Knights and Knaves run the shadow courts within each of the towns itself. So I will apologise if you can hear noise in the background. My husband is playing, I believe it's Battlefield, with some of his friends. And if you are not aware of my setup, I am just in the kitchen on the other side of a bookcase. Because compact living, yo. But hopefully that will change in the new year. We will see. But yes, so the Knights and Knaves basically run the courts. They run the courts within each of the towns. So Corkwood is run by... where is my naming? Corkwood is watched over by the Knight Captain Clasali Tiamator of House Liliaceae. So they are essentially... the House of Liliaceae are the Lily family. Obviously, it is the spring court, so it is going to be a spring-related flower. And for those who don't know about the way that I plan my stuff and build my stuff, I am really, really big into doing pointless research into weird things. Thank you for the hydration station, Tide Runner. You also drink some water, because that's very important. Water is important, but if you don't like water, I will also recommend just drink whatever beverage you have nearby you that you actually like, as long as it is hydrating you. Of course you would. So yes, going back to the Knight Captain of this town, Clasali. So House Liliaceae is a big house within the Spring Courts. It is the Lily House. It is the Lily House. And particularly Clasali, her name is an elven name meaning sweet rose. And the Tiamator House are the mistresses of the moon. But Corkwood has a strong... Because Corkwood, if we were to look at the world map of Feyawyr, it is kind of right in the middle of the spring territory in the Court of Flowers. So because it's all designed by the cardinal directions, spring is associated with air because it's eastern, but there are actually 3 minor courts within that make up the spring court. So the first is the Court of Mist, which is the transition from winter to spring. The Court of Flowers, which is the core of the spring court. And then there is the Court of Lightning, which is the transition from spring to summer. So, because obviously lightning does come from charged electricity, which, depending on what you know about electricity, is a whole heap of sciencey stuff where electrons move in the air and get fired, and this is how we end up with lightning. So I usually have crazy reasons for why I do my naming conventions the way that I do sometimes. But yes, so the king of the Spring Court overall, the overarching Spring Court, is Durridge, the Green Lord, the Rising King. He obviously has strong ties to resurrection, rebirth, all of those spring connotations, obviously. But that isn't to say that there aren't lords and ladies under him that represent other things. We have Caxia, the Lady of Ferns, who rules over Arakur and the Court of Mist, or Court of Dreams. We have Kani, the Soft Lady, who rules over Vardamir. And her domain has a lot to do with rabbits. She's got very Freya vibes, basically, which I wanted for her. We have Ketmani, the Flower Prince, who rules over Selame. And I believe he's got... I like to have some basis in real-world gods and goddesses and things like this, because it's a good place to, like, start their mythology and things like this. And I believe that he is based loosely on, and I'm going to butcher this, Zospili, which I wanted to look into rebirth gods and things like this. We have Vatnar, the Storm River, who rules over Gimrich. He is one of the only lords and ladies of the Spring Courts that has a loose base. And I say loose base, it's not actually a loose base. It is straight up an old player character who, even though he is one of the Fey lords and ladies, he doesn't actually really have a lot to do with ruling his territory of Gimrich. He kind of lets his knights and knaves do a lot of the work for him, because he's a retired god of rivers. Yes, he's a retired god of rivers and waterfalls. He has some domain over storms and lightning. Obviously, he is one of the lords who rules over the Court of Lightning. And he is very loosely, the character himself, or at least the character's story arc itself, is very loosely based on Njörður, who is a Norse god. We also then have Tubbo, the Hive Lord. He is the god of bees, clearly. The Lord of Bees. Which just reminds me of a very wonderful picture that friend of the channel, Tyrant Dungeon, drew of an old player character that we just ended up calling Beerook. So yeah. So yeah, I've done a little bit of work. I have also started figuring out the names of taverns and all of the bits and pieces. But yeah, so that's kind of what I've done. So I've at least figured out the overarching Spring Court now. And I've got some names of taverns and things like this. I've got my prep station in front of me trying to figure out where everything is as we're going to go on and build this town. So I believe Corkwood, I believe it's in Vardamir. Yes, I believe it's in the Fey district of Vardamir, which also has the one of my favourite places, let's be honest. It also has the main area of the Fae that's ruled over by the edible Fae races. It's got the sweet fields in there, which of course I have very excitedly finished my playable species lists, which I have distributed to the existing players in the game, and caused much character panic. Because there is a large variety of custom races and species. Because there are... one of the things that I really, really wanted to do was... instead of keeping it really, really loose, and because we have 3 playable planes of existence within the campaign, I wanted there to be regional differences for some of the species and races. So, for example, I will not be allowing variant human, but there are at least 3 different rule sets of races of humans. So humans are different if they're from the Feyawyr, Anthalamir, or Nethrake. So they actually have identifiable differences and ability score increases because of regionality. And I really wanted that to be, a huge defining part about the world, that there is regional difference. I think one of the biggest changes I made was to the different sub-races of Aarakocra. So we have, I know that I've talked about this before, but we have like a parrot Aarakocra, we have a hummingbird Aarakocra, we have a cassowary base of an Aarakocra, we have, if you go to Anthalamir, we have a kiwi base of an Aarakocra. So yeah, I just really wanted there to be that kind of regional difference between all of these different species. And obviously I had a lot of fun with some of the Fae species that were available as well. Insofar as I didn't just create or build or find information for just the established Wizard of the Coast races. I also looked up and found other additional playable species as well. So, for example, you can play a Dullahan. You can play a race of dogfolk called the Corkwood that started out as a joke in the very first era of the world in the Tuesday game, which this particular because it started out as a bounty hunting quest of a farmer had wanted some adventurers to come and help with his cabbage harvest, and it's that gif of the corgi going ham on a cabbage and just ripping it apart. And so that's actually the whole bounty hunting thing, that a farmer needs some adventurers to come and help defend his crop while he's trying to harvest it from these nefarious Fae corgis that are coming to destroy it. Which, incidentally, they are coming to destroy it because they find the druid who farmed these cabbages had actually awakened them, so that he'd essentially made Cabbage Patch Kids. And these corgis, being part of the Fae court and being more intelligent than, your average dog, the Fae had found these creations to be an abomination and were trying to destroy them. And the party actually had a really, really hard time trying to deal with these Fae corgis because, one, they had pack tactics, and two, they had a really wonderful ability that made them super, super cute. And so they would just give the party puppy dog eyes, and the party would want to not try to kill them. And it was great. Well, as a DM, I think it was great. The players were very frustrated that they couldn't just dispatch of this one final corgi. They were all failing their wisdom saves to not put him down a well, I believe they were trying to do. So yeah, it was fun. It was really, really fun. But there's sometimes the references I like making in my games. Not everything has to be serious. You know, especially because I do tend to attribute a lot of like serious encounter kind of stuff for the main plots and things like this. And obviously I am aware as well that my world is very lore heavy. So, you know, I want there to be this nice merge point where you can be a new player in my world and you're not necessarily missing out on not knowing something. Okay, now we've put in that wall. Let's see what we're working with. Let's have a look. Yeah, and this is a hard part that, you know, I'm really great. I really enjoy recounting these kind of things to you guys, but I'm not always the best at writing them down in a cohesive manner, unfortunately. So eventually I do plan to have this all on like a World Anvil document. Maybe. I don't know. The question is, would anyone be interested in that kind of work? for the follow, Hellman. Oh, thank you for the stretch as well. I really enjoy and appreciate getting a reminder to stretch because my chiropractor thanks you. Because, let's be honest, when don't we need to stretch more? Especially in a world when we sit for far too long at computers. That one was unnecessary, I think. There we go. I think putting in a landmass there won't do anything. And welcome, Hellman, to this crazy party that is me world building my custom world. You know what? First of all, we're going to do... We're actually going to put the cliffs up one layer. Or does that make that look bad? No, that's okay. I think that's okay, actually. What other rocks do we have here that I could use? Not the desert ones. And one thing I'm going to do here as well is cast a shadow behind all of the objects. That is weird. I have no idea why your stream would not have sound. But then again, I do things on my computer and my streams and stuff, and I don't know what I'm doing half the time. And I'm like, why does my stream not have sound even for me? By the way, second question, yes. Why was the tab muted? I have no idea. That's a very weird situation. I'm glad the mystery is solved. That would 100% explain why you couldn't hear anything. I will say it again, if you couldn't hear me, welcome. Living guns. No. I don't think they are, but it depends on the setting. Because, for example, in this particular game that I'm building, I have gone away from... Warforged because they're a very Eberron setting, but I have put in place automatons, which are essentially a reflavored Warforged. And one of the sub races that I did for that was, what better way to put in a Transformer style type of situation for those of my players who legitimately want to play a support class. Yeah. Then welcome, Hellman, because you will like the concept that I'm doing for this world. I will be streaming this game come February. And the setting of the world. So at the moment, the city I'm working on is within the Feywild, which is where it's starting. But my Feywild, we're 4 eras in, and so my Feywild, the setting is steampunk for the Feywild. The material plane, which is like sharing a parallel plane space with the Feywild, is going to be biopunk. And then the Hells, which is also sharing the same planar space, is going to be post-cyberpunk. So, and I don't call mine Magitech, I call mine Arcanatech. But you are welcome to be here, because we have done some crazy stuff with it. And I have been researching different weaponry, different weapon styles, because I want there to be that kind of diversity. Now. Yeah, Magitech is an umbrella term. Exactly. I basically wanted a way for there to be a cybernetic kind of thing. So you've got a little bit of that. You've got a little bit of that Blade Runner-esque sci-fi cyberpunk kind of thing. Architech. Ooh, tell me about it. I'm always interested in seeing how other people want to do. I'm very interested in seeing how other people want to do a more modern setting within the D&D world, because when I was considering it, I obviously did the only responsible thing you can do in these situations, which is Google it. And a lot of the responses that I was seeing on Reddit and things like this were basically, if you want to do a cyberpunk style world, don't. And I'm like, well, that's not helpful. Yeah, that's not helpful, because what if I want that to be a part of my world? Now, there is a very specific thing that I'm looking for. There are some kind of natural stone steps. We're going to have to go for a scroll through the terrain. So here we are. This is what I was looking for. There we go. Well, arcane and large. Ah, see, that's cool. See, you've gone a real clockwork kind of steampunk feel. I like that. Yeah, because one of the biggest things that I was having with deciding on the technology for my world was legitimately the fact of I wanted it to have that steampunk feel without it just automatically all being clockwork, which is why I've been working on the biopunk and kind of stuff for the other places. But I also then had to start considering, for example, weaponry. Because obviously the weaponry for the world setting, isn't going to continue all being feudalistic, especially with the rise of firearms and things like this. So that was something that I really, really had to consider when building the world of, okay, well, because of the rise of Arcana tech and things like this, that is a possibility. I hadn't considered that one. Because, yeah, to give a little context for the setting of why we're starting in the Feywild, is because the event that led the world to having this parallel sharing of the plane space was an event known as the Merge. So, and in the event of the Merge as well, and the fall of the Eldritch entities that basically were in charge of a lot of the world at this point, in lieu of that and their fall, which they had been defeated by the previous players of the campaign, the thing that arose was the fact that now there was no governing body of one of the largest masses of the material plane, which was known as the Early West. And so covens of witches stepped in, and these witch queens started to rule. But as time has gone on, these witch queens have essentially become more and more tyrannical, and so a lot of people emigrated from the material plane to the Feywild to escape their tyranny. Oh, see, I'd never even considered Fiendcraft. That's such a cool idea. Fiendcraft. We're actually going to have a low religious setting for this particular era, because the events of the Merge also fractured them from the... it also fractured them from... Yeah, it also fractured them from the celestial plane, and the reason that there is the barest hint of God presence is because the head god of their primary religion, known as the Nine, a turtle named Nei Xing, he is known as the Peace Father. He is basically the only thing, his meditation is the only thing tying the material plane to the celestial plane, basically. So that's not a bad idea. Maynard danced. Welcome. To be completely honest, there are lore reasons, but it's also a little bit of a mechanical reason. I find that, at least in my experience, and a big proponent of that is I find them, in terms of a playable race, species, they tend to be the most optimized player option, because they get the variant humans get a +1 to all ability scores and a free feat. And I'm like, well, I actually want there to be a level of race difference. I want there to be a difference for my humans. And so even though there is a mechanical standpoint behind it, I wanted to make it fit lore thematically as well. So, but I generally find, personally, for the way that I run my games and the way that I run my stories, having overly optimized characters, while not a bad thing, does tend to lead into a lot of, well, this is my character's whole role and job within the group. Yeah, and so it tends to create a little bit, and from what I've seen in my games, and it might be different of other people's games, but I've seen it happen in my games that people and players have turned around and gone, well, no, my character was specifically created for this role. And it's not a method that I particularly enjoy endorsing within my games, that people have set roles. Just because, if we end up having a party with 5 clerics, I'm absolutely fine with that. I don't have a problem with flying races. I don't, because there are things that I feel that you can do to combat that. And it's just, I find it's a very safe option if you want to build an optimized, utilized character for a specific purpose. And because my games can tend to lead away from being very away from being very combat orientated, and they're very much roleplay orientated, trying to mechanically build a character designed for a specific purpose when obviously you as the players don't know the full overarching story. I don't want anyone to end up feeling like their character is shoehorned because they've essentially built a character from level 1 right through to level 20 in their mind. I actually want them to have options going forward, which is why I'm not against homebrew or customization or flavor texting and things like that. Yeah, I find players, they don't tend to roleplay and they don't want to grow away from their initial idea of what they had set in their mind. And so therefore we end up with a lot of, well, this is my character's personality, and they're not actually influenced by anything that happens to their character in the story because they're so set on that idea. See, that's a really cool concept for how the gods work. My gods in my world do tend to work on a very much kind of a very stereotypical American god style of thing, which is if they lose followers and end up having no one believe in them, they are then no longer gods. Essentially, they're ascended immortals, and it is actually a part of what we're going to explore in this particular campaign as well, because a big driving component of what part of the plot is going to be in this game is going to be the aspect of and I've actually been having to look into fantasy metaphysical principles and things like this, but essentially one thing that a philosopher within my world decreed and researched was the aspect that the idea that gods themselves are only ascended powerful beings that are not truly immortal if they require belief to exist. A true god is something that is completely they just exist regardless of whether belief in them exists or not. So he basically created this theory of 9 metaphysical principles within the universe that exist regardless of whether people believe in it or not, because they just are. And Maynard, I also, to make sure that obviously they're not losing out, because I know that some people really love the variant human, and I don't blame them for it, but because I have these 3 planes of existence which will all be in play and have playable species and races within it, I have a huge list of not just the Wizards of the Coast races. I've actually created a huge list, one for each of the different planes of existence that they can come from, that have various differences, various ability score modifiers, because I do believe in ability score modifiers for every species that you can play. But so, for example, a human from the Hells is going to be different from a human from the Feyawild, you know, and they're going to have different aspects that lead to that. And because of that, they also then have different regional abilities. One thing that I have already told the existing players I've got in the game, I'm actually still looking for 2 new players, and the application for that is over on Roll20. I am Boomeadow over there. The game is State of Anarchy. And so if you're interested, it's still going to be open for applications until tomorrow evening. So if you're interested, go over there and have a look and have an application if you are interested in being able to play, and it's within your time frame, obviously. Yes, Hellman, I'm a mythology nut too. I love researching world lore and things like this. So, but yeah, I wanted to make sure that no one was feeling like they were... I wanted to make sure that no one felt like they were going to be hindered by not having their preferred, you know, because I know some, like, and one of the questions I actually ask is, do you have a preference for playable class and race? Because, you know, I I prefer to play clerics. I'm not particularly set on any one species or anything like that. But, you know, I know that everyone has their preferred classes that they want to play. But I will state that I don't expect people to create the perfect character to fit a situation. Like, I can understand wanting to create some kind of group dynamic and everyone kind of has a place within it. But if we have like 3 people who want to play clerics, there are so many cleric options. And on top of that, I'm also going to be, I also have a list of additional player subclasses and classes that they can also choose from too. So it's not just going to be the standard Wizards of the Coast stuff that they can have a look at and build and things within this. So, and you know, there are so many different subclasses that it really doesn't matter if, you know, you have 3 clerics or whatever, because not everyone wants to be a cleric who's a healer. And I'm okay with that. You know? So yeah. Oh, see, that's cool. Yeah, I really like the aspect idea. And the aspect idea as well then comes into the fact that because obviously a lot of gods hold different places within different domains, I like the fact that there are different ways of people worshipping different part of the entities. Within the second era of my world, I actually had one of my gods fall. She was the goddess of darkness, and in my particular setting, darkness doesn't equate evil. Darkness is usually associated with emotion, and light is usually associated with logic. Not good or evil, just 2 sides of a coin, basically. Because I wanted it to not necessarily, because everyone is, I very much run morally grey campaigns and bad guys in the fact that not every bad guy is evil. Like, you can still think someone is a bad guy because you don't agree with their reasons for what they're doing. You know, not everyone has to be an altruistic good person. I don't necessarily need my entire party either to be good aligned. I very loosely kind of follow the alignment system, very loosely, because I more adhere to, as long as your party has a common goal, I don't care if you're, you know, technically you would be deemed as an evil character. I think the only real one that I do determine that won't necessarily work very well with a party is chaotic evil. Thank you for the hydration station, Hellman. And Tide Runner will thank you for the save. But thank you for that. Yeah, I don't necessarily follow into the alignment. The only one I don't really necessarily agree goes with the rest of the party is chaotic evil, for very obvious reasons. Oh, see, that's interesting. I like that rebuilding themselves. Yeah. It's not so much the gods within this particular setting that I'm running that I'll be running, but we are going to see some of that aspect. The aspects themselves are defined as deities, but they're not. They're not good or evil. They don't really care about living beings per se, because they are concepts. They are metaphysical principles that exist regardless of whether people believe in them or not. So there is this idea that within my setting that to basically be able to manifest these entities' power, you essentially have to just be worthy. But then a big part of what the campaign is going to be is defining what worthiness to wield these principles are, because it is not based on good or evil. So, and I'm hoping that that's going to be interesting. Also, another aspect of the subplot to this is, I'm actually going to continue building this up here. Another aspect to this subplot is also going to be, obviously, taking down the Witch Queens, because they are tyrants. So that is actually going to be an aspect that's also going to be explored as a secondary thing as well. I'm trying to keep... I've got like a loose concept of what I want it to be so that the players' choices are going to reflect the game, basically, and be reflected in the game. So their choices could completely change the whole... See, that's a good idea. Yeah, inspiration's a good one. I actually, one of my current players actually gave me a link to a very good video, I think it was by Matt Coville, about also being able to reward players by listening to them and encouraging what they're interested in. So, for example... you know, reward their curiosity so they're more inclined to be curious. Because that is a bit of a problem I've had in the past, that sometimes I would feel like I'm just sitting here telling the story, leading them. And one of the reasons I love being a DM and I want to encourage them to basically follow the element of the story that they're interested in and encourage their curiosity is because I play D&D to be collaborative. Yeah, it's my world, and I will say this to any of my players, new or old. Yes, it is my world, but I do not care if you destroy it. I do not care if you save it. It is entirely up to you how you interact with it. The key is that they are the ones that have driven that decision. I don't want to feel like I'm dragging a party through a story and then them get mad because it's not something they wanted to do. See, the narrative tokens is an interesting theory that I actually haven't heard of before. I think it has definite merit. The question, I think that there's something similar. So I actually play in a Star Wars game over on Evil One's channel. Yeah. I play in a Star Wars game over on Evil One's channel, and it's a different system to the D20 system. It's by fantasy. The rule set is by Fantasy Flights. I believe it's a D10 system, but it kind of works on the fate system a little bit, in so far as it has light side and dark side points and things like this. And the party can accumulate light side points, dark side points to essentially change things in their favor a bit more. Yeah, and ideally, that's what I want to do. I want to encourage my players to think outside of the box a little bit more. But also engage in the parts of the story that really interest them and, you know, go with it to tell the story that they want to tell. Because, you know, I've actually had to... Like, I've talked to a couple of players before, and one of them turned around and said, I don't want to be a hero. Why should I save the world? And all I could think, and I said to them, because your character lives in it. Why would your character want to save the world? Because they live in it. You know, while I encourage separation of player from character to a certain degree, you still need to invest enough in your character to see them as a living, breathing character who cares about the world in which they live. if only, like, even if their only reason is, I like this world because my stuff is in it. See, that's cool. I do like that aspect of being able to change and explore the world as and alter the world in that particular method and that manner. That's a really cool idea. Gives them a little bit more versatility too, I think, to... Okay, I need to have a look at this. Is that... I think... I don't... There's something about this. It looks... It's too uniform and I don't like it. This is where you get to watch me just be a little bit too picky about where I place rocks. Oh, yeah. No, I thoroughly engage crazy behavior. I had a two-player characters who they were chasing a it was a demon of a like a rock demon kind of thing. Can't remember 100%, but they were chasing it, and they were chasing it across town. And the assassin character of the group and the tabaxi artificer wanted to basically race each other across the rooftops to get to it faster. Absolutely fine with this, which led to them having to make deck saves and things like this. And did the tabaxi fall off the roof into a river? Yes. But he has also hilariously gone heavy into the cat stereotypes of his tabaxi does not like water, to the point he took prestidigitation as a spell so that he doesn't have to bathe as much as possible because water is disgusting. So yes, little bits like that. Yeah, because even serious fights can have a fun aspect to them, I think. And I think that should be encouraged, yeah, definitely. And if using narrative tokens does that, then it's a good idea. It is very big, this. We'll use some of, I think, use some of these rocks to hide that transition a bit. There we go. See, I like it when players like create character flaws that would drive them to make bad decisions. You know, not so much that it would always constantly hinder the group, but enough that it becomes an issue occasionally, that it's an issue that needs to be addressed. Oh, the potion guy's an NPC. Well, then it's a good way to kind of trick him then if he's got a crippling gambling addiction, to like make deals with him. If there's a possibility of him winning. Lazarus. Good name choice, Lazarus. Honestly, I'm not sure. I'd have to see it in. I think I'd have to see it in use before making a decision of what I actually thought about it, because I could definitely see it being useful in the hands of one player, while also being an incredible hindrance to another. So, if it works for the player and it works for you, it's an interesting concept, definitely. Could work. Definitely could work. Yeah, potion of haste to shoot multiple times. The thing with the living gun aspect as well, though, is it is a cool concept for an NPC to have, but be aware that your characters may steal the weapon. And if they steal the weapon, they have to be able to utilize the same special abilities that you've already given it. Just keep that in mind. Oh, he's going to give it to them. Ooh. It is an interesting concept. It would depend, I suppose, on how difficult it is to get your hands on different kind of potions, I think, in the end. I think that's the deciding factor that I would have for it. Especially to give from my experience, especially with the damage that guns can produce, because I've had a couple of gunslingers and artificers at this point. The damage that guns can produce, giving haste to give them a second or even third attack could be very overpowered in certain situations. Because, yeah, my biggest thing is I want my players to be able to succeed. And I understand that, you know, as a player, you want your characters to be cool. And so I'm happy to work with my players to flavor text certain things, to... this is why the existing players that I do have in the game, so I'm looking for 2 more players at the moment. I've got one player which is Tide Runner, who is 100% certain of what he's going to play. He's got Pokemon Launcher. He is the only one that's really 100% set on what he's going to play. The others are still up in the air a little bit. I think Valcor is a little bit closer to knowing what he wants to play, which I believe he might be looking. He keeps coming back to the same concept, or at least base species. So that's one thing that he's at least working on there that he wants to do. And the other 2 are still kind of like up in the air with what they want to do a little bit, because obviously they have seen the new classes and species lists. So, and there are a lot of options for gimmick characters, there's options for really serious characters. It just really depends on what you as a player want to play. Depends on the concept you want to play too. I tend to, when I do combat now, and I'm still not like the best at combat purely because my math skills kind of suck. But I have gotten a lot better, but I do tend to find that in a lot of cases, I won't necessarily scale a fight now specifically like trying to match a challenge rating or something like this. Because it, challenge, all those challenge rating checkers and things like this don't take into consideration that of the player character builds. It doesn't take into consideration, what weapons they have. And, the players know their characters better than I do in what they can do and what they're capable of. And I very much adhere to the rule of cool as well. I will allow you to attempt, within reason, really cool stuff. Give you a chance. As I said, within reason, but yeah, I want the characters to succeed, but I don't want to just give them the easy cakewalk win, I suppose. I am an advocate for DMs fudging rolls sometimes. Sometimes, narratively, it makes more sense. I'm not saying use it to save characters all the time and things like this, but, I'm not against fudging rolls for any DM, because sometimes narratively, you as a DM, you may not have, the combat may not have worked out. And yeah, I'm not saying do it all of the time, but if your party is just having a really bad night of rolls or whatever, I believe it's okay to, if a super easy encounter that wasn't supposed to be wasn't supposed to be like a big part of anything. Like, don't get me wrong, I believe there should be tension. Yeah, exactly. The fight should end when it stops being fun. And if you are in it, and this is from my perspective of being a player as well, if you are doing nothing but being in combat and slogging through wave after wave after wave of enemy, don't get me wrong, I understand that some people find that fun, and that is A-okay. I don't have any issue with, different people's different opinions of fun. But if most of the party is just feeling like this is a slog and it's not fun, then it doesn't make sense to see it out just because you want to see the end of the combat and how it'll turn out. Because, yeah. For those who haven't been here before and heard my viewpoint on this, D&D is just a game. We come here, we come together to collaboratively create a story and have fun. And that is everybody at the table, including the DM. If anybody at the table is consistently not having fun playing a specific way, it is okay to completely change the storyline. It is okay to, as a player, to turn around and go, hey, look, I really enjoy this game and I really enjoy playing with you, but I just don't think this is the vibe for me. And that is okay. I'm a big advocate in there is no such thing as a bad table. There is no such thing as necessarily within reason. Obviously, everything I usually say is within reason. But it's very rare that there is a very bad DM or a bad table. I believe that there are not every story is for every player, though. Why is that? Yeah, it is okay to turn around and not enjoy yourself at a table and be like, hey, maybe it just isn't the game for me. And it's okay to do that. How many items they can handle using. Okay. Explain that to me a little bit more, because I understand why there's usually an attunement limit, and it's to limit people having dozens upon dozens of magical items, like staffs, wands, rings. I think it also comes down to also knowing your players as well. I've never understood the players that come to a table in an effort to win the game, if that makes sense. Like, while the DM is there to facilitate the story and play the bad guys, the fact is most DMs want you to win. Most DMs want you to finish the game. So winning, in air quotes, the game by breaking the DM and things like that, I don't understand that, because who really loses out when the DM goes, fine, I don't want to do this anymore? So who loses out then? See, that's an interesting point. It depends, Hellman, though, because I do have a couple of players who are fastidious, very organised note takers, to the point that they have drafted a perfect document that is a week by week reverse cataloguing system of note taking. Yeah, see, I don't put encumbrance on. A lot of my rules in terms of encumbrance and that kind of stuff is basically, you know, it has to make logical sense. You know, you can be a strong character, but you're not going to be carrying like a caravan's worth of stuff. Yeah, you can't have 5 sets of armor on. You know, there has to be limitations on how much stuff you can carry because, well, bags have limitations. I do put limitations on how many bags of holding can be produced / bought. I.e., you could be somebody who can make bags of holding. And so, you know, starting a market to mass produce bags of holding, all it does is crash the economy on bags of holding, and all of a sudden you're not making as much money as you thought you would because, well, you've flooded the market. You can do it. I'm not going to stop you from doing it, but, you know, actions have consequences. And that is... Yeah, you strap 3 horses to your back and go for a jog. Exactly. No one's going to do that. That's why I don't see the point of sitting here and fastidiously keeping track of, oh, well, that candlestick I stole weighed like 5 grams. Like, that's dumb. I don't see the point in doing that. Generally, if they put on armor, I still obviously adhere to if there are limitations to them wearing a specific type of armor. But generally, if they have types of armor, I take it as given that, you know, we're talking a full set of armor here. You know, pauldrons, chest plate, braces, greaves, all that kind of stuff. So the idea is you have to, and the fact is, if we're working on the idea that most adventurers, if a normal commoner, like for them, their stats are 10 as standard, and that's basically the average person in the world, almost all adventurers are above average. So they're going to be strong enough to wear the armor. They're going to be strong enough to, you know, or at least a level of base armor kind of thing, you know? Okay. Actually, I've realized what I want to do here. Yeah. I tend to get more relaxed, Hellman, Because I usually run a lot of online games, so I don't know everybody that is going to apply to my game. I obviously can't speak for their character, which is why I obviously have interviews and things like this when I take on new players and stuff. But as a general rule, I do tend to get more relaxed about what I allow players to do the longer they play with me. Because, you know, they've gotten to know me over time as a DM. I've gotten to understand their play style. And, you know, as I said before, yeah, you can break the game, go for it, but who's really losing out there? Because once, you know, you've broken the game and you've won technically, and the DM's just like, fine, do whatever you want. Not long after that is the DM going, I don't want to run this anymore. And like I said, who loses in those situations? You know, the idea is you want to keep playing your D&D, not... Hi, Evil One. Thank you for the subscribe. You're on a 3-month streak. That's amazing. And I will save shortly, Hellman. That's exciting. I appreciate the subscribe. I think if it works for you, and I will say this, I will go with the safe answer. If it works for you and your party, then that's what works for you. I think if I had, like you've said, if I had a party who was a group of longtime friends that I played with, and, you know, I understood their play style and stuff like that, yeah, go for it. I tend to be hesitant just to do stuff like that initially off the offset, just because, like I said, you know, I want to get to know my players before, especially because they're probably new people who I haven't played with before, and they don't know me, they don't know my style, they don't know how relaxed I am, or they may think that I'm very rigid on some of my opinions. So I like to leave that scope until, you know, and we do tend to start to find our kind of vibe, basically. But if it works for you, then that's amazing. Oh, I want to make those rocks a bit smaller. So what I'm building right here is I'm thinking about putting in a little bit of a seawall. There we go. Do that, I think. And there we go. Now, I don't think you have, but I will say if it is going to be a link, I don't think my chatbot allows it. I don't think I have you on Discord yet because I haven't actually opened up a Discord channel for my Twitch yet, just because I don't have a full-time like moderator who can go in and just keep an eye on that. Keeping an eye on things, unfortunately, because I want the communities that I'm involved with just to be good places for everybody and things like this as well. I don't think so, Hellman. Sure thing. I won't be able to do that right now just because I am currently in stream, so I'll have to do it after. Oh, isn't that the best feeling when you make, like, you end up having a perfect map that you've created? Yeah, I've got a couple of maps like that I'm just like super proud of, and I absolutely love the way that they've come out. Yeah, I think there is. I just haven't got it set up yet the way that I want to make it all work, unfortunately. So yeah, C's will be docs, and then when I start doing the coloration, because this is obviously not the color that this is going to remain, I'll do some of these a bit sandy. There are going to be farms out here. But to appease Tide Runner, I will save. You might be able to. Maybe. I don't know. Try it. The only thing that will happen is my chat mod will catch it if they won't allow it. So, just try it. Between now and the start of the game, I might end up setting up a Discord. Okay. Yeah, go for it. Let's have a look here. There we go. That should hopefully help with that. There we go. But yes, between now and the start of the game, I will endeavour to... Alright. Thank you, Evil One. I will redeem that save. Let's have a look. Oh wow, that's really, really cool. I particularly like the blip. The blip is really, really well done. I also particularly like the compass you used in the corner. Ah! Thank you for the stretch as well. Ugh. Oh, thank you for the stretch. Physics and logic don't work so good there. That is a good way to put it. Okay. Why is that? So yeah, getting these docs all in place. See, I'm really, really excited to get back to after tomorrow. I'm excited to get back to the prospective players. One thing, and I did put this on the application after the fact, after one of the applicants actually sent me a message, and it was a very kind message. But one thing that I do tend to do, because I believe it is very important, and it sucks not hearing when you apply for something. So regardless of if you get through to this particular game, unfortunately, you know, we do have to put limitations on how many people you have in the game, because there have been some really good applications too. It's going to be so hard to figure out who I want to pick. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit of a group interview, as in the existing players we're going to have in the game are also going to be there, because obviously, you know, they're going to be people that you play with, and so knowing if you get along and understanding everyone's vibe is an important thing. Oh. My Nightbot is a little is a little bit keen. Ah, see, that's cool. Let me guess, there are potentially sea monsters that be there. But yeah, so regardless of whether you get through to my games or not, I do endeavour to send a message to everybody who applied to just let them know whether or not they got in. You know, nothing fancy, like it's not going to be like, oh, you didn't get in for this reason or anything like that. Like, I don't think that that's necessary, but well, because you're playing with a group, and my games are relatively long running, I will say this. We're talking at least more than a year, basically. Definitely more than a year. One game I ran for 3 years. So, which I am aware is an anomaly in the world of online games, that I consistently had players show up almost every week for 3 years. But this is why I have such set times. Yeah, this is why I have such set times, though, that it's always going to be on that day of the week. It's only going to be 3 hours a session kind of thing. So it usually goes from, I'm going to say for my time, 7:30 until 10:30. I don't necessarily take breaks to go to the bathroom or things like this. Like, generally, if you need to go to the bathroom, you're a grown up. You know, just excuse yourself, go to the bathroom, and then come back. You know, But because I'm going to be streaming this game, I might take a 5-minute break in the middle just so that I can get more water and stuff. But yeah, and over the Christmas holidays, so this time of year, I usually take a break from mid-December, usually until the end of January, just to account for school holidays and things like this, and whatnot. Just because trying to work around, just trying to work around people's life commitments and everything, because as I've said before, D&D is a game and it will never be more important than your life stuff. If you have family commitments, go to your family commitments. I'm not going to get mad at you for that. You know, you can be assured that your character is not going to die while you're not there. You know, I'm not going to axe anybody that doesn't show up or anything like that, you know, because I don't believe in doing that. It's you know, it doesn't make sense to punish somebody for not making the game, because yeah, like I've said, we're all grown-ups, we're all grown-ass adults who have lives, who have jobs, who have families. We're doing this for fun, and the minute it stops being fun, what's the point? You know? I also outlay in the fact as well that commitment is important. So if you say you're going to be there, yeah, exactly. And in certain situations, like, I know that accidents happen and you can't necessarily always give warning, you know, but I think the only thing I do generally tend to ask is, you know, even if it's just a quick message of saying, oh, hey, I'm not going to be there. You don't have to explain. You don't owe me an explanation ever for why you're not going to be there, because I do turn around and legitimately say a mental health day is a valid enough reason not to show up, just because mentally you're not there. You can't do it. And that's okay. Some days you're just exhausted and it has been one of those days and you're exhausted and you just want to go to bed. Also, hello, Ozwombat. It is wonderful having you here. Yeah, sometimes you're just exhausted and you just can't do it that week. That is okay. That, like I said, you don't owe me an explanation for why you're not there. I'm your DM. I'm not your parent. You don't need to explain it to me. So, yeah. Just, even if it's 5 minutes before, as to the best of your ability, just try and let me know that you're not going to be there. Because then even with 5 minutes, I can kind of plan accordingly, even if it is very impromptu. And like I said, a lot of my players, you know, have families and things like this. So sometimes they're going to miss it because, you know, they have something on with their kids or, you know, something like that. And that's okay too. I would much prefer you go be with your family if you need to be with your family, you know. Mummy rot. That sounds horrifying, by the way, Ozwombat. I end up, see, if there are 6 or 7 years of play, I always reluctantly say seasons just because it gives that connotation that it's a performance or a show. But you know, seasons seems to carry it for whatever it is. I mean, I never go in with the offset of like running for 3, 4, 5 years. Like, don't get me wrong, that's the dream. And if we manage to make that, that's fantastic. But I never really hinge on that because so much can happen in that amount of time. Yeah, not always years. Yes, unfortunately, you can't always guarantee years into a campaign. And sometimes that's just the way the cookie crumbles. But I think that's always the dream, to have longer campaigns if you can. Unless you're running specific modules or whatever that is. And honestly, what is a campaign but just a whole heap of modules that kind of end up mashed together? See, there are benefits. There are definite benefits to being neurodivergent. Um, yeah, having squirrel brain definitely helps. I myself am not neurodivergent, but I will say that anyone who's seen the way that I plan, the only reason that these streams are anywhere near linear is because I have to come in with a plan. But that's one of the reasons why I started streaming them in the first place, is because they forced me to sit down and plan. Otherwise, my squirrel brain would get me every time. Because yes, as I explained to David today when I was having a conversation with him, my issue with the way that I plan is I start with a singular question, but then my brain asks more questions to help me answer that question, and I end up going down the rabbit hole of just answering question after question about the whys of how things operate in my world. Unfortunately, I've gotten to the place within the campaign planning itself that I legitimately can't do any more story stuff. Like, I can work on the basics of how the magic works and how to do this and how to do that, but honestly, that's like long-term campaign stuff. I don't even need to work that out right now because it's not something they're going to be immediately dealing with. So I'm at the point where I legitimately can't create more until I have player characters in the world and I have their backstories. That song ended so weird. Sorry. That little spring at the end just got me. Yeah, and that's exactly it. Like, there are so many things that can take place, the stories within stories that can be told, And, you know, I think that they're some of the really fun things that you actually get to adapt when you are basically world building and campaign planning and things like this, of the actual figuring out the motivations of why people, and this is part of the reason why I do run very morally grey campaigns. I really enjoy the whys of why a bad guy would do something. You know, especially intelligent bad guys. Yes, I do. See the Middle Ocean. Okay, let's have a look at the Middle Ocean. Are you talking about the west sneakback and east sneakback? That's bottomless. That's technically bottomless. Eventually the pressure would be an issue. Thank you, Evil One, for redeeming the hydration station. I very much appreciate it. You can probably hear that my voice is getting very rough. That hydration station can be redeemed by anybody as well, not just for me, the creator, who is sitting here talking and whatnot. A hollow earth thing in D&D. Now the question then comes, Hellman, does that mean that your world is spherical or flat? Yes. Does that mean your world is spherical or flat? Does it go straight through? So is it like, does that mean that your world is a ring world? Flat mooners. How does a flat moon even work? Are we just talking like it's a disc in the sky? I had considered in the previous campaign that I had run about actually, like, I hadn't actually stipulated whether this world had multiple moons or not. And I had actually considered briefly, considered that I was going to have 3 moons. But then my little squirrel brain went, okay, but what does that mean for shifters and werewolves and lycanthropes? How does that affect their power? Because having 3 moons on 3 different lunar cycles creates this weird situation that they're not all on the same lunar cycle. So what does that mean for lycanthropes and stuff? Are there like levels to their lycanthropy insofar as they don't always look that way? Well, and here's the thing though, like when we talk about the power of the moon, like, and this is where I start looking into moon myths and things like this as well, like there's still that level of triple aspected, you know, at least within Celtic mythos, there's the triple aspected goddess of the moon and things like this. And I know that that's not wholly Celtic mythology, but the thing that comes up with that then, and this is part of the reason why I had originally thought that perhaps I would have 3 moons to actually represent this. But again, I'm like, okay, well, it means that there's this power of the moon kind of thing that, again, does it affect lycanthropy differently? So, yeah, a full moon forces transformation, but then it depends on the mythology of werewolves and lycanthropy in general, because obviously we have seen different forms of lycanthropy, obviously, that the older a lycanthrope is, the more control they have over the ability to change. And we've started to see this a bit more in common media, like modern media, that werewolves can can dictate when they change, kind of thing. Which then, does that mean that they're a lycanthrope or they're a shifter? But then, you know, it gets referenced back to a moon curse or something like this. And I'm like, okay, but does that then mean that they are forced to transform on the full moon and the rest of the time they have a level of control? Are they only contagious on the full moon? Yeah, Bella taught us these things. Bella's got a lot to answer for. You know what? I've actually seen some really subjective things that, as time has gone on, as people going back and re-reviewing Twilight and things like this, that there are various arguments, as obviously the demographic that grew up with Twilight has gotten older. I think it's a very interesting discussion on the topic of character assassination, because Jacob was a good character. He was a good friend to Bella, and then partway through the way, it feels like a little bit, to a certain degree, while Stephanie Meyer had wanted there to be the love triangle, it was always predetermined that she was always going to be with Edward. And when she saw the popularity of Jacob, she had to trash his character so people stopped supporting it. Which, if you were going to do that anyway, like, I could understand if Jacob was a bad person to begin with, but yeah. The fact was, she ended up having to write Jacob worse to make Edward not... And she did end up writing Edward better as the series went on, so... Oh, see, that's nice. I like that, Hellman. See, honestly, I'm Team Bella. She shouldn't have ended up with either of them. A 50 Shades of Grey prequel. Well, 50 Shades of Grey was supposed to be like the adult version of, well, depending on if you ask the author or not, was like the adult version, a retelling of Twilight, but for like adults. And I do know that E.L. James did actually have to change from when it started out, as I believe it was a Wattpad story, I believe, to start with. It was a fan fiction anyway. And there were enough similarities that her editor, before she did actually turn it into a book, told her that she had to change things because it was too intellectually similar. Yeah, exactly. And we've seen the rise of other really bad kind of fanfics and stuff like this, like After. I didn't like After. Same tier of writing. Oh, see, I like that being the reversal of it, that they're animals kind of that can basically become human. Powerful moon mages, basically. That's cool. I'm not going to lie, I do float around BookTok and BookTube because I really enjoy the discussions around books, and the fact that some of the people I follow, they don't necessarily sit there and identify a book as good or bad. They more lean into the fact that a book may not be for their specific demographic. And that's okay. That doesn't mean that they can't read it and appreciate it and things like this. So but yeah, I do enjoy. I am actually part of a book club that we do read. We do read certain books and catch up for discussions like once a month that I started recently. This last month we've just read Neuromancer, which has actually been a really interesting book so far from what I've read. See, I like the fact that there's a lore reason for why they do what they do. That's really cool. Just recently on, I think it was on Netflix, I watched The School for Good and Evil, and I'd read the books and I really enjoyed the books. So I don't know what I feel of what they did to the show. Like, I felt the show was good, but I felt like there were some elements that they had changed. The things that they changed didn't detract from the story, but at the same time, there were some changes that they put in, and obviously I understand because it was a movie as opposed to a TV show, I understand that there are things that they do have to keep out. Yeah, that makes sense, Hellman. Yeah. A genetic mutation that's passed down, which that genetic mutation then becomes a passable disease, yeah. Or a passable genetic anomaly, which means that there is a level of infection, like bacterial infection to it. Less of a virus like a zombie virus, more of a passed on genetic thing, disease. Yeah, makes sense. You know, as somebody who reads, like narrates audiobooks as well, it has given me a scope to actually read books that I wouldn't necessarily read before. And I kind of attribute to them the same things that I do with my D&D. I don't necessarily think there are good books or bad books. Because I think every book has the possibility to be great if it had, like, you know, if every book went through the same level of editing and things like this, and some of those things were caught that would actually make the process a bit smoother. Because obviously we don't want every book to be the absolute same. Otherwise, what's the point of telling the story? At the same time, I have read some books that could have used a little bit more editing. Just to pick up on just little things like repetitive sentence structure and things like this. See, that's one way to do it. In my particular setting, because they are in the Feyawyr, it's more of a case of animals have gained sentience for me. But that is one way to do it, that animal people are just shifters who, I mean, we have true polymorph, for example, that if you stay in your specific shape for too long, you become that shape indefinitely. And I could see that there are probably a demographic of mages, wizards, druids who would potentially do it on purpose. So I can see that, definitely. Spot the furry mage. Hey, look. Sometimes there are druids out there who want to make their fursona their only persona. I mean, that has always been one of the jokes about mages, is the fact that they just love animals so much. I realised I'd gone far outside of the city walls. Yeah. It is unsurprising how much the, in air quotes, others myth gets spread a lot. And, you know, that leads to, and that can lead to a lot of prejudices in, you know, that I think that can be a very good way to lead to prejudices within your campaign system. Because it's, I mean, especially because we, you know, running fantasy worlds, especially if they are very feudalistically styled, there are things in the world that people can't explain. And we've seen it throughout history that, you know, if people don't understand something, their first instinct is to respond with fear. And this is how, you know, we ended up with like witch burnings and things like this, because people just didn't understand medicine, or they didn't understand how someone could do the things that they were doing because it must be witchcraft, you know. And that can be a real turning point for a campaign of like not knowing what you were going to do, and just the common folk being afraid of other. Yes and no, Oswombat. There is a level. I will point out I am neither for nor against AI art. Obviously, I'm not an artist by trade. Like, I don't make my living from my artwork. But I can understand why there is at least a level of controversy in how the AI is, like, generators are trained. So I do understand that aspect of it. But on the other hand, I have seen some really good discussions from artists as well, who have turned around and said, you know, you can use, depending on the prompts and everything you use, they can create a really good base that you can then take into Photoshop or Procreate and tweak it, add your own things to it, you know, to change it so it's more yours. So I think it, for me personally, it could end up being a really good baseline tool, but completely creating an artwork from AI generated art, I can understand why there is a little bit of controversy around it, just because obviously there is the level that it is trained, and it is possibly being trained by using plagiarized artwork. So I can understand that. I think it is something that it just needs a bit more tweaking. But as for taking jobs from artists and things like this, I think it's like any kind of new technology. I don't think, you know, the AI would stop learning if artwork was not being produced. So there's always going to be a place for artists, and there's always going to be people who are going to prefer human-made things as opposed to AI-generated things. Yeah, exactly. I think it's a learning tool, and it's like any other tool. If you can learn to utilize it and roll with it, and it can make your artwork, it can possibly elevate your artwork. I actually saw a really good video by an Australian artist, Jazza, on YouTube, who he and his brother who does Shadowversity. Yeah, they point out that there are some really good elements to it that can help you tweak it and build it, but it is a process. It is a time consuming process. You can't just put in a series of prompts and get exactly what you want the first time. It's a constant tweak here and there. Yeah, exactly. And for example, if you're looking for a specific pose or something like this, I can understand how that would help. Isakesh. I like that it's a mesh of the two different areas. Oh yeah, and I really like the artwork that you've got for it. I like the fact that it's got some of those Egyptian kind of vibes. That's really cool. Yeah, basically. And there are always going to be people that break the rules as well, which is the other thing that needs to be understood, that it's going to be, we're going to see legal stuff happen, we're going to see the aspects of, the artists protecting their work and yada, yada, yada. And so they should. And that's absolutely fine for them to do that. But yeah, you are right. It is an argument that's been had before.
Every little thing you do, it gets me thinking. By another shot, you got me drinking. Girl, you shut me down and there's no witness. Got me in my feels, she would never listen. All the
Yeah, Hellman, that's really, biggest trading hub. And obviously in hubs like that, depending on the era, having slavery as a part of the economy, it's something that's been done very historically. I mean, for the longest time, even in our world, slavery was one of the biggest trades in the world. I mean, and to a certain degree, there is a level of adversity for characters who have that as well. I mean, I think the key part is well, they have their moral reasons for doing what they're doing. There are always going to be people that turn around and say, oh, well, we're doing it to save these people. But the question is, depending on who they're sold to, they're still being treated as property, which there is also then parties that turn around and go, well, that's wrong too. And it ends up creating a dynamic for, well, if the players interact with it this way, of they may try to abolish the slave trade because their moral standpoint is that it's wrong. You know, it depends on the party. Yes. Exactly. And that's exactly it. Like, it is something that is very prevalent. And I'm a big believer in the world you create has to have problems. Now, that doesn't always have to be slavery, but it has to have problems because no world is perfect. As a blanket rule, I don't have systemic racism against one entire race or culture, but I tend to make it a more individualistic thing, just because the world is so diverse. But it's also the case of, because there are so many different species, there are going to be people who don't like each other. For example, and I know that this is probably a little bit of a stereotype, but for example, like the dog race, the Corkwood, don't particularly like tabaxis. They realise from a societal standpoint that they are an advanced species, i.e. they have sentience, they have autonomy, they have the knowledge that it's not just a biological thing, using some of the Zootopia argument. It's not just a biological thing anymore. Obviously, they have civilized society that is telling them that they have to accept it. But that doesn't necessarily stop the fact that there's this inherent belief throughout history that their people hated each other. Or at least, you know, it depends on how far you want to take that argument, though. Were tabaxi originally cats? See, the Corkwood at least originally started out as dogs, and they have gained elevation as a sentient beast race. Whereas tabaxi, are tabaxi just people? Well, and this is the thing about slaves as well, is generally the slaves would outnumber the masters, but it is fear that controls. And you know, fear of retaliation is what basically kept the slaves in line. Exactly. And that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to make racism an inherent norm within my world, because it doesn't make sense. It has to be a taught thing, and usually those are taught on an individual basis. So something bad was done to a person by a specific species in my world, so it means that they're likely to have those inherent prejudices against them and teach them to their children, you know. But it doesn't mean that it's a blanket one rule is for everybody. I like the real dune look, the dune graveyard. That's really cool. I love some of the colours that it's picked for you. The Monster Blood Brew. You'll need to describe that one a bit more because I don't understand the question. As in, if they're born with monster blood? Oh, yeah, that does make sense. I think it's an interesting concept. There are plenty of nationalities that make liquors and things like this out of very weird things like scorpions and stuff. So it's not an unheard of practice. A long time ago, I've seen Starship Troopers. That makes sense. Sorry, I just saw your comment, Wombat. Okay, done that now. We'll do the water first. I have a very specific water texture that I like using as well. It's this one here. Go this one, turn it all the way up, but I think I want to make the size of it smaller. Maybe have some walls along the wall side. I'm going to have a wall in there, so this is the base document, and I'm going to put in these walls. I want to bring this down to 0.5. Come in here and we can also nope. Start as a base. I think this is my problem. I think I want it to be a little bluer. Like that. Off. Looks blue once the... Okay, cool. Might just have to turn this off for now so I can blend it properly. come back with this one. We'll go. That would help if it actually has any kind of opacity on it. Bring it brightness down even further. Some really nice darkness down here.
I want you to jump like you trying to get stuck in the air. If you feeling so late and don't care. Shorty beat in her face in the mirror, up in the air. I want you to jump, 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 jump.
Well, I'm going to add some waves in a minute because there's actually some really good. Go with 7 here. And there are going to be some areas where this is also corrected.
Like you trying to get stuck in it. In the air. Stuck in the air. I want you to jump like you trying to get stuck in the air. If you feeling so late and don't care. Shorty beat in her face in the mirror, up in the air. I want you to jump like you trying to get stuck in the air. If you feeling so late and don't care. Shorty beat in her face in the mirror, up in
Just making sure I'm writing down all my values so I can do them later on different maps.
jump. I want you to jump, 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 jump. Up in the air. I want you to
Okay. And it is.
like you trying to get stuck in it. Gotta get it. In the air.
Okay. So we could try and bring in some C. Too big still. Too big.
So you wanna go to war with me? You're talking like you think you're royalty. You think that I'm afraid, but I don't break. I heard you question my stability. You think I'll fall just like a guillotine, but I am here to stay. Won't look away.
If I don't have to individually place, well, I'll still probably.
The storm is coming, so you better start running. No, you can't control it. My bones, I'm coming for the, coming for the. Coming for the throne. Coming for the throne.
This is C. Thank you for the posture check, Kelman.
So you wanna be my enemy? You should've known I'd never kiss the rain.
Thank you for the stretch. Posture check. Like I said earlier, My chiropractor will thank you. Okay. It's not bad. Move the opacity up first. We'll see what it looks like on a... Yeah, so that's what I was worried about. A D4, yeah, that's a decent amount of damage. I think I'm going to have to keep these at 100 just to make them look cohesive and normal. No. I know why I don't like it. Because I usually use these grass tufts around buildings. So I actually do just want a base green. This is not going to stay like this anyway once I start putting in roads. Now, Corkwood is a Fey run town, not a human run town. 30, I will point out, 30 damage though at lower levels is exceptionally powerful. It would depend on what level you're introducing it at. These are cool textures, but not for this area. Okay. Okay, yes. It's going to take too long to do it this way. Oh yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay. I think we'll go with that. So this is... Okay. No problems, Helman. Thank you for showing up and having a big chat. It's been great having you here. And thank you for sharing your world with me as well. No, you've given me a lot to think about, so thank you for that. And yes, thank you for sharing your world with me. Nazurok is wonderfully created. Called a sweet shot. That's cool. Also, a gun made of bees would be horrifying. Pathfinder has those. Oh god. a beehive and turning it into a... All of a sudden, this is opening massive possibilities for some kind of bee railgun. And I don't know how I feel about this. Thank you. Stingers, yeah. Does that mean that an armed forces that were armed with these bee rail guns would operate using sting operations? Sorry, even I feel bad about that one. I am sorry. Beware the stinger. Oh, God. Oh, no. That's always the worst, Wombat, when that happens. You put all this time and effort into creating this, you know, absolute baby of a character, and then it ends up dying. First session. My condolences. Bye, Hellman. See you next time. Catman Victor. It's good to have you here. A sting operation, yeah. With a bee-powered railgun. I don't need to give one of the players in my games any more ideas for things like that. Now the problem here is this doesn't even need to be... Darken it slightly. Bring down the saturation just a bit. Does that look about right? Yeah, I think that works. Now it should be changed. What part should be changed? DM Catman. Oh. Welcome. I hope you're having a wonderful night, or morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. It's just these little things here that just kind of elevate your maps as well. Do I need to go to this level of detail to make a town map? No, but I like how it ends up looking, basically. key is to make it look like it's breaking where a wave would organically break.
23, she left her body and hovered above me. I saw no shadow, I looked around, searched every building and home that I found. I saw no shadow, but felt a glow. The warmth inside me kept me afloat. It felt like heaven had found my bones and gave me comfort when I feel alone. Now you're gone, I'm alone. Guess it's time to get better. Through the pain, I will go alone. If I fall, break my bones, I will scream even louder. 'Cause I'm not dying alone. I lost my best friend to 23. She left her body and hovered above me. I lost my best friend to 23. I heard the heavens crying above me. They gained an angel, I lost a friend. I felt like dying again and again. I went through hell, stared at death, but I keep fighting with each living breath. I saw no way out from where I stood. Felt like the fire had burned me for good. Now you're gone, I'm alone. Guess it's time to get better. Through the pain, I will go alone. If I fall, break my bones, I will scream even louder.
And there we go. We'll cover the coastline. You can see down there what it looks like when you do that. However, this brings our building time tonight to an end. So I will see you all back here on Monday morning if you so choose to join me, depending on the time where you are in the world. And we will continue building on this map and hopefully getting some buildings and the actual townscape itself settled, basically. Thank you for everybody who joined. Thank you to everybody who followed. If you like what I do and you didn't follow, please don't hesitate to follow and turn on your notifications so you know when I go live. Otherwise, you can look down in my About section, which will tell you my schedule, basically, exactly when I will stream. Thank you for the follow. Yes, which will tell you when I stream and things like this. I am usually here map building on Mondays, Wednesdays and Saturdays. Wednesday, depending on the day, it will be Wednesday in the morning or Wednesday in the evening, depending on, well, in the new year, it'll be when the Grung gang comes back. I play over on Evil One's channel as a Grung on Wednesday nights. So that usually interchanges. So otherwise, if you want to see me do some other things, I play some Xbox console games here. Lately, I've been playing Lost in Random and Tinykin on Tuesdays and Thursdays. As I said, my schedule is down below if you ever want to check that out. If you want to catch up on this on repeat, you can catch it on my YouTube channel of the same name, Boomeadow. Or if you just want to leave me a message, you can reach me on my Twitter, which is Booberry Meadows. Otherwise, thank you so much to everybody who joined, had a bit of a chat, redeemed channel points, and all of that kind of stuff. So I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or night, wherever you are in the world. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of the evening. And I will see you all on Monday. Bye.